Hello makers, and welcome to Sheer Stitchery. I'm Catherine Harris, and I do sewing and DIY tutorials each week, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can see more. This week, I'm doing another collab with a fellow YouTuber, Chantel, from Chantel Cynthia, and I'll leave a link to her channel in the description down below. We decided it would be fun to send each other boxes for a fall-themed decor craft that we could do, and we don't know what we're sending each other, but we did gather a couple of information from each other. So I found out that she absolutely loves farmhouse decor with lots of neutrals. So you've got the whites, the greige grays, and little pops of color. So I decided that we would do a farmhouse tiered tray with all of the accompaniments that would go on that tray and a couple of things that she could switch in and out. And of course, I had to add something with sewing on here. And if you're a long-time subscriber, you may remember last fall when I did sweater pumpkins, and they are also in there, but I've also included a new twist. So let's get on to that tutorial. Bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum. So to start, we're going to do the tiered farmhouse tray. This is the base of what we're going to be doing. So I've got a 9-inch pie tin here, and I'm just marking out the center. I'm just going to use a Sharpie to place that in there. You can do it an approximate when you're going to glue it, but I just wanted to be a little bit more precise so my tray lines up nicely. And we're going to do that on our porcelain plate as well. And this one is an 8-inch porcelain plate. Then you're going to take E6000 adhesive, and you're going to put a bead of that along the narrow end of your candlestick. This one is a thrifted glass candlestick that I got at Value Village. The pie tin is from Dollar Tree. I believe it was $1.50. And the plate on top I got at Walmart in the discount bin for $1.88. Now what a deal, because these trays can go upwards of $90 online, and you know, we can make them ourselves. Next, I'm taking isopropyl alcohol wipe, and I am just wiping down all of the surfaces after the glue has had some time to dry. Now you want to do that because you don't want to have any moisture or any residue left on when you're going to paint, otherwise the paint is not going to stick. So I'm using a spray chalk paint just because it's a bit easier, but in the box that I'm putting together, I am including some chalk paint that you can paint on. It just takes a little longer. And so I did 3 coats on the bottom and 4 coats along the top, and it got pretty nice to where I wanted it. Now I am using a glaze, and this is a matte glaze specifically for chalked paint. I got it from One Man's Treasure, which is an antique furniture store here in Stony Plain. And I'm just going to put a thin coat on that and let it dry. It'll just protect that surface so it's a bit more durable. Next, I'm taking some acrylic black paint, and it is glossy, and I am just running the edge of my paintbrush along the top of this because I want to create that ceramic chippy look of that enamel that you see in a lot of the farmhouse decor. So I'm also doing that on the bottom. Sorry, you can't really see it as well, but it's exactly the same as the top tier that we did. And once that is done, our tray is completely done. Now on to the wooden pumpkin picking sign. So this one is super cute. I got this wooden sign from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just sanding off all of the glitz and glitter as well as any of the finish on both the front and the back, because I would like to paint this and I want it to be double-sided, so we could even put a message on the other side as well. So I'm using the regular chalk paint. I believe this one here is Martha Stewart one, and I'm just painting this. It's in a pure white to go with the rest of our tray. And I'm just using a sponge brush to put some light coats on there. And I did about 2 or 3 coats on the front and the back of the pumpkin. And I also painted the sides, even though we're going to paint this a different color later on. These sides are a little bit darker than I'd like. So I'm just going to put a coat of paint on top of them, just so the paint will go on a little bit nicer once we change up that color here. And so just make sure that you paint this on. I am not dabbing, I'm actually stroking along here, and I kind of like the look of some of those paint strokes on this pumpkin. I think it makes it kind of more of a country charm on that, but if you want, you can dab it and also give it that texture. So here I am using a light gray to do the sides. I am also going over the edge of the pumpkin along the front because I want to see some of that gray peeking through on the front of the pumpkin. And I'm just dabbing some of that off because I want to give it sort of like a brushed on feel. Next, we're going to pop into the Cricut design space and we're going to upload our graphic that we're going to put on our pumpkin. Now, if you want to download this graphic, I will leave a link in the description down below to the blog post on my website where you can get this for free so that you can make your very own sign. So I'm just popping out the Cricut here, and I am using a removable vinyl for this one. And I actually, on my settings, I like to put the settings on, when I cut it, on an extra deep cut. I find that that cuts the vinyl a little bit better. And it's also really handy if you're using a permanent vinyl to have it cut extra deep. Now, when I originally did this, I had these 2 little floral leaf patterns. They did not cut well. That is not on the download that I will be giving you, but everything else is. I'm just removing those. And so Chantel, if you are watching this, just remove those little floral pieces because they did not cut quite well. And I wasn't going to waste the vinyl that I'd already cut out because it's perfectly fine. We just need to scratch away those floral pieces. Next, we're going to take some Cricut transfer tape and we are just going to place that on top. And we're going to press down just to make sure everything adheres quite well to that. And then we're going to place it on our pumpkin and position it exactly where we would like it. And then we are going to get our bone folder and we are going to burnish those letters on. It is incredibly important to really make sure that they are stuck onto our wooden sign here before we go to peel it up, or your letters are going to get pulled away. And now we are all done. I like to save my stuff for later. Now we're on to the weathered mason jar candle. So for this, I got a dollar store candle that's in a mason jar. It's only $1.50 at Dollar Tree. And then I decided to paint it with some chalk paint. And so this is a nice blue chalk paint here. And you'll notice that I'm actually swiping it on and then I am dabbing because I want that textured look to this candle. It's just really going to make it pop. Especially when we go and scratch off the glass to give it that weathered look. So I did 2 coats of the blue, and then I went ahead and I used some sandpaper to take off just the raised edges along the glass. And I find that this is the best way to give it a nice weathered look. We want to get the mason jar logo on here as well as our half cup on the side. I think that that looks really nice. That being said, I decided to go back and actually change it to gray. And I thought that it looked a lot better in a more neutral tone. Next, we are going to place our ribbon on. and I'm just using a black and white buffalo check, very Farmhouse, and I like the way that the copper goes with the gray and the buffalo plaid check. So the black and the white and the gray with that coppery tone really brings out the fall vibes. Just attaching that with a little bit of hot glue so that it stays in place. And now we're all done that. Now on to the sweater pumpkins. Now this is the one that I had mentioned that I had done last year. If you want a more detailed tutorial, you can go check that video out. I'll also leave it linked in the description down below. Basically, I'm using a thrifted sweater that I picked up for $3 at the thrift store. I took it home, I washed it, and then I'm cutting out the sleeve. And then I'm going to thread a darning needle with some yarn, and I'm going to do a running stitch along the bottom. And then I'm going to pull those taut, tie them in place, and then flip it right side out. Then we're going to get some fiber fill, and we're going to fill up our pumpkin. And so you're just going to want to put it in just so you kind of get the size and shape that you like. Next, we're going to thread that same needle, and we're going to do the exact same running stitch that we did along the bottom, but we're going to do that along the top row here. Now we want this one to be neat because it's not going to go inside out. Then we are going to tie that up, and we're going to create the sections of the pumpkin here. So you can see that I'm taking the yarn and I'm going through the middle of the pumpkin down to the bottom and then bringing it around the outside, and that's going to create those sections. I ran out of yarn, so I had to attach some more yarn. So when you do this, make sure you leave a long enough tail that you're able to continuously use the same one. That way you're not having to tie another knot in the end here like what I did. And once that is all done and you've got all the sections exactly as you would like that, then you're going to tie off your yarn pieces on the end and trim those tails, fluff it up, and then we're going to take it over to our hot glue gun and we're going to glue in a twig. And I found this twig outside on one of my walks. And now I like to create a little stem, and I use the exact same yarn that I used to tie everything up. In the stem, I wrap it around the twig into the hot glue so it stays. And then I'm going to get some Mod Podge and I'm going to saturate the yarn with the Mod Podge, and then I'm going to curl it up. Now you can curl it up over a stick like what I'm doing here, or you can just wrap it up and just place it on top of the pumpkin. That works as well. Now, like I said, we have the one with the twist, and that is you're going to cut out 2 squares of fabric, and I'm using the black and white buffalo check. And we're going to stitch down either side. So this is going to mimic how that sweater sleeve forms a tube. So we're going to do that on both sides, and I'm just using the edge of my presser foot as the seam allowance for this, and the size of your pumpkin will depend on the size of your squares. Next, we're going to do the exact same steps as we just did with our sweater pumpkins. So we're going to thread the top piece here. We're going to pull that taut, stuff it, and then do the top of the pumpkin. And this time I have a longer piece of yarn so that I can get more of these sections in here. And we're just continuing on doing all of these sections until we have it just the way we like it. And then we're also going to top it off with a twig in the center, just as we did on the other one, and tying off the ends with the Mod Podge and the yarn. But this gives us a little different view. Next is the Farmhouse Succulent Plant. Now for this, we're going to paint a terracotta pot, and I'm painting the inside as well, and I'm using chalk paint on that. I've given it 2 coats. Next, I wanted to give it a bit more depth along the rim, so I decided to use some gray chalk paint and just highlighting the details of that rim. And then once that is done, I'm going to let that dry. And I'm going to take my succulent. Now you can use a real one and insert dirt and plant it, and that's fantastic. But because I'm mailing this, I can't mail a real succulent, so I'm going to use a succulent pick, and I'm just going to snip that down to size so that we have it nice and ready to fit inside the pot. And then we are going to take some floral foam and we're going to cut that down to size. I'm just using my scissors here. They are the paper scissors, not the fabric ones. Don't panic. But it probably would have been easier to use a knife. And I'm popping that in the bottom, putting my pick in, and then I'm going to use some Spanish moss. And that's what I'm going to put along the top. I'm just securing the pick in place with some hot glue, and then I'm popping the moss on top. Next, we're going to use that same coordinating buffalo plaid ribbon to tie along the base of our plant. So I just take enough to tie it in. Next, I am going to take my hot glue and I'm going to secure that in place. And then I actually twist it over each other so that it lays nice and flat. And it sits actually perfectly when you have that hot glue. And then I'm going to trim the end. So I'm going to fold it in half and then I'm just going to clip, and that gives us a nice little bow end. And our potted plant is now complete. Now onto our coffee mug. So for this, we're going to head into Cricut Design Space and we're going to select our font. And I selected Cami Rae, which gives that Rae Dunn inspired font. And I'm just arranging the letters here. I want pumpkin and spice to be the same size. I am merging them together or welding them together. And then I am going to go in and print it out, and we're going to weed it the same way that we weeded our vinyl. This one, though, instead of it being removable, is permanent vinyl. And so once we've got that looking like we want, then we are going to come in with the transfer tape, cut a slice that fits, and then we're going to pop that over top of our design. And I'm just burnishing it along the back here. And then you're going to pull that off and you're going to place it onto your coffee mug. Make sure your coffee mug is clean and there's nothing on there. And then you're going to burnish it quite well, making sure that all the letters are really pressed down. So you notice my P kind of came up, had to burnish that a little bit more. And at the end, the E, the center piece, came out, and I'm just putting that back on. And then I'm going to come back in and burnish that over with my bone folder here. Just fixing the N, and I'm just using my weeding tool here just to get the N nice and where I'd like it and a little bit straighter. And then just burnishing down some of those letters to make sure that they stick and they do not come off. And now our cup is done. Next, for the Farmhouse wooden spoon that accompanies this mug. So this one's super simple. All you have to do is take that gray paint and paint the handle just a wee little bit along all the sides with the chalk paint, and then in order to dry, you just pop it into the cup and you're done. Now packing it up for delivery. This part is so exciting. So I'm wrapping up all of the glass pieces in some tissue paper, and I am hoping with all of my hope that nothing breaks, because I've got quite a few breakables in here. And so I'm trying to arrange this as tightly as I can, because I know if you pack things tightly and they don't move, it's less likely to break. So fingers crossed, everything gets to Chantel all right and undamaged. And I'm just popping in all of the supplies that she is going to need to complete this. And I thought this looked a little nice, so I added some packing material in here. And then I gave a little extra fabric for there, as well as the paint, so she has the same colors that I used, some yarn, and a little instruction guide. Well, now that I've got the tutorial all down for you and I've packed up the box for Chantel, I'm going to pop on over to the post and get it sent off to her. And it should arrive in a couple of days. The post system has been a little slow these days, so hopefully it arrives quite soon. So I look forward to catching up with you guys next week. And if you have any ideas on what you'd like me to make next, let me know in the descriptions down below. Or if you'd want to participate in a craft swap with me, just send me a message. Until next time, makers, let's get our sewspiration on.